Hello guys, bersama saya lagi dalam ORAITNOPO channel. So ini dia bahagian kedua yang mana sesi libat urus Madani mendengar ya bersama dengan Datuk Seri Rafizi Ramli. Hari ini golongan profesional pula yang memberikan soalan-soalan mantap kepada Datuk Seri dan juga jawapan pun mantap juga. Jadi tanpa membuang masa, ayo kita bersama-sama untuk menonton ya video ini. Mana sudah videonya? Kita cari dulu. Oke. Alright, so ini dia. Ayo kita tonton bersama-sama.
Predict for us, exciting times for the healthcare, long-term care industry. We will get more and more clarity, I suppose, in the next few months. The plan is to go with a white paper on aging nation first. And then a few months after that, you will see more in RMK 13. Okay? Next round. Yes, William.
Thank you, YB. So as you may know, I'm representing the retail and F&B nexus, and I'm also the president of the SME Association, Samantha. But before I get into my points, there are 5 points. I just want to address the foreign workers that was raised by Presma. And you have said there's a possibility of us going sectoral when it comes to labor requirement. Statistics, 2.7% of all the workers in the retail distributed trade are foreign workers, only 2.7%. So I'm hopeful that if you're going to go sectoral, that you will consider, and the government consider favorably for at least Presma requests, if not to extend the number of foreign workers, to at least let them retain their current quota. Back to what I want to say, as you're aware, YB, retail is the largest sector by number of establishment. It's also probably the weakest in terms of its productivity. And I think the problem is really structural in nature. Low barrier of entry. Almost anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur decide to go and become a retailer or open a store. And it doesn't help that we have got at least 15 agencies and ministries that put in money to train entrepreneurs and to prepare them to go in the retail sector. So you have people who are unprepared go in, high failure rate, and as a result, you continue to have this low productivity cycle. So what we really need to do is really to now, moving forward, hopefully in IMK 13, to focus not on every retailers, including the micro ones, because they are covered by the handouts and so on, but to focus on viable retail business. For example, we do not want to continue this issue where Tekun have an NPL of above 10%. That shouldn't happen, if you go for viable retailers. The second point that I want to make for the retail sector is really on how can we make large-scale digitalization happen. I think the time for us to encourage is over. We probably have to go besar-besaran on the digitalization concern and make it compulsory for every retailer to, at the very least, accept e-wallet, if nothing else. And the second point I want to make on the retail side is on RD and DGP, the Dasar Gaji Progressive. A lot of focus currently is of course on upscaling. In our conversation with the retailers at every sector, what the sector really needs is less upscaling, more cross-scaling. We want to migrate from the current work environment that we have to one, like for example in Australia, where you have one waiter doing basically everything. The waiter is also the host, the cashier, the bartender, the drinks maker, and the cleaner, the housekeeping and whatnot. In Malaysia, we have 5 people doing that same one job. So I think we should incentivize companies to do rescaling. Ditto with store assistants. These people can perhaps be retrained or cross-trained to be visual merchandiser and so on, rather than having multiple tasks on the same person. The third point I want to make is really what we do to hold ministries and agencies within our sector accountable for the economic KPI. We keep hearing the ministry saying, look, our main focus is on bekalan and harga. And I was in Bentong last weekend at this Tom Yum restaurant, and this makcik in her 70s. At the same time when I was there, this ministry came in and visited the makcik. And she was visually shivering, menggigil. So I asked her, I say, makcik, why are you shivering? It's just a routine check by the authority. She said, oh, last year they came, I was fined 5,000 ringgit. I said, why are you fined 5,000 ringgit? Because she forgot to put the name of a company in the receipt that she issued to the customers. So something as simple as that, she was 5,000 ringgit. She said that wiped out her profit for several months. So she was very fearful that that will happen to her again. So my point here is really, I'm hopeful that as part of IMK 13, that on top of providing the funds to the ministries, we also mandate them to fulfill their KPI where business development is concerned, not just in terms of enforcement and Haga and Bekalan and so on. So that's for the retail sector. I have 4 points, but in interest of time, I cut it short. I also want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the SMEs and how do we scale the SMEs. I think, first of all, I get asked all the time, including by KE, some of the officers say, look, we've been giving grants and incentives to the SMEs. We've been helping you to upscale and so on. You're not taking it up. And after many years, you're still complaining that SMEs are not scaling up. I think the issue is very clear. Number one, we are not just fighting with mindset and so on. We're also fighting with illiteracy. A lot of the SMEs, especially the smaller ones, are just illiterate. There's nothing you can do. It is a structure. There's nothing you can do to try and move them up. And to highlight the issue of cost and compliance and the burden that it costs to SMEs, just these 3 years alone, since the unity government, there's been a number of new regulations that impact the SMEs. For example, we now have the Occupancy, Health and Safety Act that has came to force, requiring all SMEs to employ an OSH coordinator, full-time, train, full-time, work for them. We have the PDPA Act come in force, requiring every company, regardless of size, to have a data protection officer. We have the, of course, 17A of the MACC Act. We have the e-invoice regime that just came in. We have the minimum wage that just kick off next month, 2007. We have ACTA 446 on minimum housing standards. We have the changes to the Employment Act to allow for 98 days of maternity, paternity leaves, option to work from home, etc. And of course, recently, I think just last week, it was announced that if you are to hire any expat, for every expat that you hire, you need to hire 3 interns. I mean, each of these policies are well-meaning and on their own has little impact to the SME. But when you combine all this in a short period of 3 years, you can imagine the burden it costs to the SMEs. So what we are hopeful is that we need to rethink, in terms of policy introduction, are we being overly ambitious? We are trying to achieve what Japan took in 20 years, what US do in 40 years in trying to reform their labor structure. We're trying to do this within 1 term of the government. So the impact is far-reaching. Many SMEs telling us they probably want to give up as soon as this year when e-invoicing gets rolled out. So we're hopeful as part of the IMCare 13, if you're not able to scale this in, they will work even harder on ensuring that the GRP is in place and the care sense idea of the RKB and so on is put in place, and we must hold agencies and ministries accountable, not just in dismantling unnecessary regulations, but also a mechanism that if they want to impose fee mechanism, increase their fees. For example, Talent Corp recently expat fees, it went up by 250%. Not 5%, not 10%, 250% starting January this year. So in order for them to increase fees moving forward, we are hopeful that the government mandate that they will show some kind of efficiency that is derived from that increment of fees. Something like a la Trump sort of a government efficiency act or department may very well work. So sorry if there's a lengthy point. Last point, I promise. And you got this right. You say that it's time for SMEs to move away from made by Malaysia to made in Malaysia. So we want to extend it and say that, now that Malaysia is sharing ASEAN here, it is time for us to collaborate and say what we can do to create this built in ASEAN concept, built in ASEAN, to take what we are good at in our IP, our technology and so on, in branding, and the production can be done anywhere else in ASEAN. So not just as a consumption powerhouse, as I mentioned earlier, but also as a production powerhouse. So hopeful that the matching grants are transitioned from just directly supporting export to really creating IPs and innovation that are able to drive this built-in ASEAN agenda. I've got a few other points, but I'll skip that. I want to talk about how China is coming in, displacing us, they bring the entire supply chain, raise the rental for everybody, and then get out and disrupt the entire, but we skip that. I want to talk about how SC and Bank Negara can better support SMEs financing. I want to talk about how we should restructure our grants into tax rebates for productivity. So instead of taking money, we say, we give you a rebate and focus on productivity. I want to talk about the focus on innovation and tech output. But again, for interest of time, I think I will end here. Thank you, YB.
Okay. Assalamualaikum, YB Rafizi, Faiz from Association of Marine Industry Malaysia, AMIM. Association of Marine Industries of Malaysia, AMIM. Representing SBSR, shipbuilding and ship repair for Malaysia. Alright, I have 8 proposals, but I will make it quick. Okay, number 1, we would like to request for the extension for the imports duty and sales tax exemption that currently is going to expire by 2027. We need this, incentive to be continued beyond 2027 to ensure we can be competitive with other regions. With other nations like Singapore, Thailand, and Indonesia in this industry. That's number 1. And number 2, proposing to make Sarawak as the SBSR development hub, because we need to capitalize the Sarawak dominance in this shipbuilding industry, which is, we believe, Sarawak contributing almost 90% of the Malaysia's shipbuilding export. And then third, Malaysian built for Malaysia by ensuring a compliance amongst of the government's departments and GLC through implementing the Buy Malaysian First policy. Number 4, request to get the exemption for the stamp duty for the shipbuilding contracts. To achieve this, we are proposing to recategorize shipbuilding as a manufacturing activities rather than providing services. Number 5, green vessels built in Malaysia. Recently, we embarked in Langkawi Sunset Cruise, Penang Water Taxi, Lumut Pangkor Ferry, which is really good, but we need more. As we see right now, there is some of the incentive for the EV, but more favoring for the land transportation. We need more for the marine industry or marine transportation as well. And number 6, having a flexible financing solution for the maritime industry. Yeah, we noted and thanks the government for allocating the budget, but we need the channel to be more flexible and industry friendly for the industry player to get access towards that funds. Okay, number 7, enhancing research and development for maritime sector through public-private partnership and innovation funding scheme, focusing more on the industry-driven rather than academia-driven. And lastly, is the implementing a clear and concrete bank guarantee system for the maritime sector through developing a policy frameworks and also risk sharing agreement. That's all, YB. Thank you.
Terima kasih.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam Malaysia Madani, salam sayangi Malaysia. YB, Rohizam daripada Tourism Productivity Nexus. As YB know, tourism cut across all ministry. It's quite complicated when we're trying to solve even a small issue. Everybody like to travel, everybody love tourism sector, and in fact it's a therapy for all when it comes to makan and travel. Kan? So actually berdasarkan your initiative, New Deal for Business Dulu, we have compiled all the issue, trying to find out how we can help the industry. And in fact with the guidance of Cik Suren and Cik Zahid from MPC and all the people from Kementerian Economy and also MPC, we have turned the issues to opportunity. With now your idea of bold and radical for Rancangan Malaysia ke-13, we have produced a document. I don't want to go and through all this because there's 49 issues in here. All right, if you don't go through. But these issues are not just an issue, but how we transform issue into a radical and as well as generate economy for the country, reduce the cost for the government, increase profit to both government and as well as industry. And to put this, it take us 8 months to compile. And I also would like to acknowledge some of you here. Probably you can stand up, some of the tourism nexus, whoever contribute to this document. Haji Shah, Captain Shafiz, please, Vimala, whoever here. It took us 8 months to produce this. Yep. And I would like to take this opportunity, YB, to serahkan document this to you, if you don't mind on the stage.
Ya, come. Sebab saya tak payah jawab lah lepas ni kan. So, dia ada macam-macam trik tau nak submit. Yang ni submit atas, yang tadi Amim kau tak bagi kat atas kan. Okay, alright. Okay, thank you. Oh, ni mudah lah. Next one suruh compile. Yeah, next.
So, Assalamualaikum YB, saya Arifin daripada People System Consultancy. Kami merupakan perusahaan sosial. Okey, yang mana kami telah pun memperkasa lebih 100,000 individu golongan rentan di Malaysia, termasuk Sabah dan Sarawak. Alright. Okey, jadi YB, saya ada satu soalan dan juga satu cadangan. Okey, soalan saya, kerajaan pusat dan juga kerajaan negeri menjalankan banyak program inisiatif untuk memperkasa ekonomi, membanteras kemiskinan dan sebagainya. Juga kami, perusahaan sosial, banyak menjalankan program yang hampir sama. Okey, jadi ya, metod kami as of now berjaya meningkatkan pendapatan rakyat yang kami latih up to 70%. As of now, 60,000 telah berjaya kita bantu. Lebih dari itu, apa yang saya nak highlightkan di sini adalah data YB. Because data is the new money. Okey, apa yang kami ada? Kita ada meaningful data dalam konteks demografi, pendapatan bulanan, ke mana dibelanjakan dan multiplier impact yang selari dengan Multidimensional Poverty Index by UN. Soalan saya YB, bagaimana kami sebagai sebuah perusahaan sosial yang telah diakreditasi oleh COSCOP boleh menyumbang kepada kerajaan dan ekosistem di mana pada penghujungnya data dan impak yang kami perolehi tidak terhenti kepada komuniti, tetapi juga boleh memanfaatkan kerajaan dan korporat dengan lebih telus, signifikan dan juga tangible. Okey, itu soalan saya. Cadangan YB. Bukan demand, cadangan. Okey, RMK 13 sekiranya bolehlah kerajaan boleh mengubah satu dasar bagaimana selain daripada akreditasi untuk kami perusahaan sosial, boleh diberikan juga more tax incentive. Bukan sekadar untuk kami, juga kepada pemberi dana yang mendanai projek-projek sosial. Okey, yang mana in return kami selaku social enterprise akan ada satu mandat untuk memberikan data-data yang signifikan kepada pendana-pendana ini tadi yang selari dengan UN SDG. So actually they win on that part. Dan dalam masa sama, di mana kerajaan win? Bila kita banyak menjalankan program-program sosial, lagi banyak data-data di peringkat akar umbi yang kita ada dan kita serahkan kepada kerajaan, lagi banyak program-program yang lebih berfokus, lebih sustainable yang kita boleh jalankan. Itu sahaja dari saya YB, terima kasih. Alright.
Ini kira last round kan? Second last. Lepas ni kita balik sebab nanti akan jam.
Assalamualaikum YB. Saya Haja Ida Rizwana binti Idris, mewakili Bumitra, iaitu Persatuan Syarikat Pengendalian Pelancongan Bumi Putra Malaysia. Dan pada masa yang sama saya juga adalah pengarah Andalusia Travel. Isu yang saya nak bincangkan hari ini, yang saya nak kemukakan disebabkan oleh pandangan daripada RMK 13 tadi. Saya lihat bahagian pelancongan hanya ada satu isu, iaitu bahagian ekon. Tetapi sedangkan dari segi sudut pelancongan umrah, sebenarnya banyak isu yang saya nak minta bantuan daripada Kementerian Ekonomi, walaupun sebenarnya isu-isu ini juga harus dikemukakan kepada Kementerian Pelancongan. Tapi kami telah kemukakan, mungkin Kementerian Ekonomi juga boleh bantu kami. Okay, isu yang pertama yang ingin saya wujudkan di sini, yang ingin saya kemukakan, hari ini, minggu ini sebenarnya kita telah lihat banyak sangat berlaku penipuan umrah. Dan sebenarnya industri umrah ini sebenarnya membelanjakan sejumlah hampir 2 bilion setiap tahun untuk pengunjung-pengunjung rakyat Malaysia pergi mengerjakan umrah. Penipuan ini juga telah mengakibatkan kehilangan hampir 100 juta setiap tahun dan tiap-tiap bulan ada sahaja kes-kes yang berlaku. Jadi saya melihat ini sebagai satu isu dan saya kita lihat sama ada boleh ataupun tidak dalam RMK 13 adakan satu dana ataupun insentif untuk menyokong inovasi dan infrastruktur digital untuk semua syarikat umrah yang rata-rata kebanyakannya adalah SME, dan mungkin satu sistem pusat yang boleh mengawal penjualan umrah bagi yang boleh mengawal, di mana di situ sistem itu boleh pasti sama ada ini adalah penjualan yang sah. Yang kedua YB, pada masa yang sama juga, kalau boleh kami mohon untuk dapat mewujudkan satu koridor pelancongan dan meningkatkan infrastruktur pelancongan bagi meningkatkan dan menggalakkan pelancongan domestik, terutamanya ekoturism, dan juga insentif kepada pemain industri domestik juga diperlukan. Dan yang last sekali, kami juga perlukan sokongan kewangan dengan berikan insentif kepada syarikat pelancongan Bumitra Bumi Putra yang melabur dalam infrastruktur moden seperti apps bagi kita boleh maju lagi industri pelancongan umrah. Itu saja.
Last ada tambahan. Last, okay, and then that's last kan. Nanti kalau jam nanti marah dia.
Hai, Assalamualaikum. Salam sejahtera Datuk Seri Rafizi dan semua. Terima kasih kepada Datuk Seri atas ruang ni berikan kepada kami semua. Saya Asrul Hadi bin Ahmad, boleh panggil saya Asrul, mewakili syarikat 2M World ataupun lebih dikenali sebagai Dr. Rocket. Kami bukan persatuan parti politik tapi Dr. Rocket adalah consultant, education consultant yang membantu pelajar master PhD untuk mereka menyiapkan tesis dan kajian mereka dan menamatkan pengajian mereka dengan bahagia dan cemerlang. Cuma isu yang saya cuba bangkitkan pada hari ini di depan Datuk Seri Rafizi adalah berkaitan dengan education. Sebab saya percaya education ini juga mampu menyumbang kepada ekonomi dengan sangat baik. Okey, dan antara isu yang saya ingin bangkitkan, kalau kita maklum, okey, netizen ataupun anak muda termasuk kita yang berusia ni ada cabaran ataupun ketidaksukaan untuk menyambung pengajian disebabkan beberapa faktor. Yang pertama, mereka maklum bahawa untuk menyambung pengajian pada peringkat tertinggi master PhD ini, mereka menghadapi cabaran yang sangat besar. Contoh pengurusan masa dan lain-lain. Yang kedua, pelajar master PhD terutamanya PhD, kita dimaklumkan di sokmed, media massa, di berita-berita bahawa pelajar PhD ini mereka tiada kerja. Mereka tiada kerja. So soalan saya, okey, apakah perancangan daripada pihak kementerian dan kerajaan untuk membantu pelajar master PhD ni? Sebab kita tahu, okey, dari segi beasiswa mereka, pelbagai beasiswa yang ditawarkan seperti MARA, HLP, SLAB dan lain-lain. Tetapi beasiswa itu saya rasa tidak mencukupi. Mungkin ada bantuan lain yang secara khusus, okey, seperti mana pusat tuition. Kalau pusat tuition, kita di peringkat sekolah rendah, sekolah menengah, kita ada pusat tuition khusus untuk memastikan anak-anak kita ni belajar dengan sangat cemerlang. Apa kata kalau kita cadangkan satu pusat tuition ataupun kelas pengurusan seperti mana kami, okey, menganjurkan pengurusan, kelas pengurusan untuk pastikan mereka pelajar master PhD dapat tamat pengajian dengan sangat-sangat cemerlang. Sebab kita maklum mereka yang menerima beasiswa di luar negara, apabila mereka pulang ke Malaysia, mereka gagal untuk menamatkan pengajian dan lebih teruk, mereka perlu membayar semula pinjaman yang mereka telah lakukan kan. Yang kedua, okey, soalan kedua, apakah perancangan daripada pihak kementerian dan kerajaan untuk memastikan pelajar PhD ni ada peluang pekerjaan? Sebab kita maklum bahawa negara China dan Indonesia mereka memanggil graduan PhD terutamanya untuk membangunkan ekonomi negara mereka dengan memanggil graduan PhD di seluruh all over the world untuk mereka menyumbang kepada ekonomi untuk pastikan mereka bergelar gergasi dunia seperti China dan Indonesia. Okey, itu sahaja dari saya. Terima kasih Datuk Seri Rafizi.
Finally, last one.
Okey. Assalamualaikum dan selamat petang. Terima kasih Datuk Seri kerana sudi menerima pertanyaan saya. Saya Diham daripada SPMB. Saya ada satu pertanyaan. SPMB, Syarikat Perumahan Negara Berhad. Saya ada satu pertanyaan, satu cadangan dan satu harapan untuk Pak YB. Untuk makluman YB, SPMB terkenal dengan satu program yang kita namakan Program Rumah Masyarakat, iaitu membina rumah untuk golongan B40 di tanah-tanah mereka dengan subsidi RM20,000 dengan harga rumah RM75,000. So program ini mendapat sambutan yang sangat baik YB, sehingga statistik kita pada 31 Disember lepas kita ada 15,000 permohonan yang sedang menunggu. Terima kasih kepada Kerajaan Bandar pada tahun 2025 kita telah diamanahkan untuk buat sebanyak 5,400 unit. Tapi jumlah peruntukan tu tidak dapat menampung permintaan yang berada sekarang ni. 15,000 tu YB adalah senarai yang sedia untuk menunggu untuk diluluskan. Kita ada juga lagi 60,000 permohonan baru yang masih dalam proses menunggu lagi. Jadi pertanyaan saya YB, bagaimana pihak Kementerian Ekonomi boleh membantu SPMB untuk menangani lambakan permohonan macam ni, seperti ini. Kemudian antara cadangan yang kita boleh cadangkan kepada YB, kita mengharapkan agar pihak Kementerian Ekonomi boleh membenarkan peruntukan tambahan diberikan pada SPMB untuk menambahkan lagi permintaan lambakan untuk menangani lambakan ini, sebab kita akan memberi impact kepada kontraktor-kontraktor G1, kontraktor G2 yang kelas-kelas kecil ni, dan memberi impact kepada pemain industri seperti kedai-kedai hardware. Kita akan kembangkan lagi ekonomi mereka, dan harapan saya YB, kalau boleh harapan cadangan ini dapat dipertimbangkan oleh pihak Kementerian Ekonomi bersama pihak Kementerian KPKT dan MOF. Terima kasih YB.
Terima kasih.
YB, your secretariat tu yang itu, dia kata kena beranikan diri. Last question pun, last pun ada.
Okay, alright.
So, anyway, saya ni more on policy. From the engineering consultancy services industry and also Lembaga Jurutera Malaysia. One item that kita nak cadangkan to take seriously by the government, if we want to hire much higher in our economy, digital economy ke apa, is data sharing and accessibility of government data that to the industry. Without that, we cannot go forward. Banyak example yang kita kata around the world. If you look at the tech company, big tech company, and even if you look at Elon Musk nak buat hantar rockets overseas, he doesn't start from zero. He gets data shared from NASA. NASA gives the basic data, science, and they go forward. Satellite data. We have satellite facilities. We have rented satellite around the world, tapi all used for very few people control, mostly for security. But satellite technology is needed now in all sectors, but we cannot, tak boleh. So if we are talking about new areas, going forward, then data sharing, and the policies of data sharing, accessibility, and we seem to be stuck. We are worried about security. Ni bagi orang ni mampus kita semua salah guna and all that. We cannot. So this is one area that I think is necessary kalau kita nak betul-betul melonjakkan going forward higher. And if we want something to higher, we also need, why things like this are important? Because it gives a chance for all sector to participate. Satellite technology, orang nak hantar satellite, orang nak analyze data, orang nak share data, creative, research, new products, ini in Malaysia, even if you want to get the rainfall data, cannot. So secret. Susah. Macam-macam surat kena isi. Rainfall data, what so security issues about it. And banyak lagi issues macam tu. We have a lot of data information collected by the government, kept by the government, but cannot share. And all these things are not cheap, data collection semua ni. And kept by the government, not tak boleh share, then what is it for? So simpan. No? We have to open up and unlock the value of data. So this is one area of policy dah lama kita bangkitkan, tapi there's no interest, I think. But science technology need that. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you. Okay. 4:59. Okay, so I'll try to conclude everything. Tadi ada berapa, lebih kurang 12 soalan within 10 minutes kan. I think Williams punya comment tadi, ada satunya, we will take it offline juga for specific deep dive on scaling up SMEs. In fact, Kementerian Ekonomi has been working with all the other kementerian for the last 2 years. We've gone through the process to see what is the best practical way to scale up our SMEs with OECD. Even with the OECD, to be frank, OECD pun in terms of policy suggestion and so on yalah, it's not something yang ada silver bullet. So in terms of restructuring our economy, there are a few thrusts. First, of course, we need to push for the big boys, so to speak, to go and do more complex and go international and have more ambitions with the policy support dan sebagainya. Of course, the bigger issue is actually scaling up our SMEs. It's a lot easier to do that than scaling up our SMEs. So we will go another round and therefore we'll go into the details of this. Then RMK 13 definitely will have quite a thick focus on SME. But having said that, to address some of the issues you mentioned, consistently in any strategy, one of the best ways to scale up SMEs anywhere in the world is digitalization. It's true. The problem is the spread of SME yang kita ada, and also the type of activities yang SME yang kita ada. Contohnya kan, the majority of our SME is actually F&B. Makan, minum, buat kuih, So when we talk about digitalization, we talk about scale, it just doesn't resonate kan. So that's why when we look at the strategy and say digitalization, the past attempt of doing digitalization by giving digitalization grant, and eventually dia jadi digital marketing. The money actually, a lot of it went to Meta, went to, God knows lah, TikTok semua, sebab dia gunakan grant kerajaan tu untuk pay the platform, untuk promote kan. So it didn't necessarily affect the structure and strengthen the upskilling and so on. So it's a work in progress. I have to say, of all the things that we've attempted and we've been looking dekat Kementerian Ekonomi, one of the biggest challenges is actually scaling up SME. SME is basically 97% of industry in this country. So while we focus on the big boys, on the AI, data center, whatever you call it, actually at the back of our mind is how do we push, and this is the bit yang I think, I think we have to accept that it requires push and pull. Sometimes, and this is the bit yang kalau macam e-invoicing, while on the one hand I know the pain if I were running a small business, but from macro perspective juga, apart from tax collection ke apa, is also sometimes is always asking what is it that we can digitalize quickly kan? So I think that's also, but I think at the moment it's best to really deep dive and start seeing, because my concern is, as you point out, if we continue the current way, we will spend a lot of money, and I think the annual allocation total of every kementerian agency every year for SME is 40 billion ringgit. So I hope you also understand, bila orang datang kata kami perlukan lebih banyak insentif, kami perlukan lebih banyak dana, of course I understand daripada your industry perspective, what is another 30 million? Tapi to us, managing national budget is actually 40 billion already. Kan? Jadi sebab itu we really need to focus a lot on how exactly to have impactful investment that can radically, over a period 5 to 10 years, change the structure of our SMEs to go up. I concur with you in terms of, if I were SME owner now, the impact of all the new regulations on my business. So as part of the process, I think we do need to map out everything. And so the first round, you see, there's what government can do is to balance, and therefore is to segmentize. I think the first round of so-called deregulation, so to speak, to ease the cost of doing business for SME is on audit requirement. Audit requirement has been eased out, and before this semua kena audit. Saya baru buat company 1 sen pun tak dapat lagi, selepas 1 tahun kena bayar. And at the very least, bila you kena audit, company set paling kurang RM200 sebulan, audit paling kurang pun RM3-4,000 setahun. So that means that 500 ringgit per month. That's actually quite a big sum. And everything is built around audited accounts. Kalau tak ada audited accounts, tak boleh buka bank. So I think that's why mapping out everything so that we will be able to say, look, if this is a threshold of what SME can itu pun SME pun ada kategoris dia lah. So I think we also have to go through that process. On KPI, in principle, as a policy decision, the government has agreed to map ministries and ministers' KPI to to economic outcome and sectoral outcome. So, but okay, the details, how exactly do you want to do this? Dulu we started dekat Pemuda, basically this idea about cutting red tapes, hence New Deal semua ni kan. We focus the last 6 months on coding it into a bill, because you need to code it into an act. Otherwise, different people come, masa orang ni dia focus on reducing red tapes. Kalau different set of people datang, mungkin dia tak buat. So we have to codify it as a legal bill so that government and public agencies actually are held accountable by it. So a lot of this, I think, will happen as we go along, and it's part and parcel of the focus to build more transparency, accountability, and to reform the public sector. But it's not as if that kalau kita kata, oh, you have to be accountable, this is your KPI. It's not like private sector lain, because you are an employee to your boss, to your owner doesn't like you, either dia tutup company or dia cari orang lain kan. Public sector ni tak boleh lah, to be fair, because of the humongous nature of public service, it's actually quite difficult to pinpoint sebenarnya when something doesn't work or doesn't give an outcome for the whole sector, who's actually responsible for it. Kalau fraud senang, someone took money or someone took corruption, the specific bill, and then you can pinpoint. Tapi contohnya, say myself as Menteri Economy, naturally people say that you must be accountable to economic growth or to poverty eradication. I will not contest it, tapi katakanlah the growth suddenly drops to 3% because ada global recession. So it's like, for us to say, ini salah menteri, salah KSU, salah TKSU, while we can do it, tapi I don't think it will contribute to building accountability culture. So the details and the fine-tune is to make sure it's not so much about to apportion blame. Ini salah kementerian itu, ini salah agensi ini. What we want is to build accountability to outcome so that we get the best return and the best service daripada public sector to facilitate private sector. That process is ongoing. Part of it is from Iltizam, which is basically Government Efficiency Act sebenarnya, Iltizam. Most probably it will happen in Q1 this year. And even when we have the bill to compel government, the series of circular processes, when we say accountable, how exactly, reporting to Parliament, all this will have to be put in place in the next 1 year or so. So it will take time. The rest on DGP, I do understand that juga. It's also depending on sector by sector. What I noticed, the difficulty to develop programs or incentive or intervention from government is to make sure that whatever you design is not abused by people. I hope all of you from industry understand kalau industri buat something tak laku, is okay. You rugi je lah kan. Tapi kalau government buat sesuatu and ada unintended consequences, for example fraud, the consequence of it to public sector, to the kementerian, to agency itu usually quite bad lah. Some people kena dulu masa kita ada subsidi upah. You know, everyone lauded it masa COVID, you know, it's good, government provides subsidi upah kan. Little did we know, actually a lot of companies abused it and claim it, you know, millions and millions were lost kan. Jadi obviously if you put yourself in the shoes of the people designing this, jadi akhirnya dia jadi extra careful. If we do this, nanti orang tipu, so tak boleh. If we do this, nanti orang tipu. Sebab itu for the time being, a lot of it is about upskilling. And the reason why it's upskilling is because it's already within HRDF and Kesuma punya upskilling punya framework. Cross-skilling, itu something yang I think quite new. Although that is what is needed in some sector. So we'll go through that process juga. And sometimes it's longer because you need to put all the governance in place to reduce the risk of abuse. And trust me, while kita yang dalam dewan ni tak abuse, there's a lot of people out there. You'll be surprised. I bagi one contoh lah yang I felt that I was very naive. When we were designing certain things, I was very naive because I didn't think that ada orang gila macam tu in our society. Tapi ada. So when we decided, kalau cara biasa rakyat dia nak mohon peruntukan untuk baiki jalan, you know, longkang kecil dekat rumah dia, before this payah je. Nak kena pergi daerah lah, nak jumpa adun lah, semua payah. Adun kata tak ada peruntukan. So we allow people to apply directly to Kementerian Ekonomi. So that we have different streams. Ada yang jabatan minta, ada yang rakyat teruskan. I didn't think of one blind spot that I had. Actually yang paling banyak minta ni guess who? Contractor lah. And ada contractor, satu nama minta, you know, the first round when we started satu nama minta sampai 500 projek. And then by then you know lah, you know, you question the big question mark, actually projek ni diperlukan ke tidak ni? Then you have this problem, jalan dah cantik, pergi surface sekali lagi semua kan. So of course, you know, then we intervene and we make sure there's algorithm to block after one or two application block, lepas tu, and then ditambah a series of work. We need to have a Google Maps semua to check betul ke tidak ada longkang kat situ. For all you know, tak ada longkang, you know. So, you know, after about 2 years plus, then I do understand the complexity di peringkat penjawat awam when they want to decide. Not so much because dia berkira, but orang Melayu kata nila setitik rosak susu sebelah. So those are the things I think bila kita discuss DGP yang itu, we were only thinking about upskilling because the framework already exists. Cross-skilling, if we can build it into the existing framework, then you know, in principle we don't have any problem whatsoever lah. Amim tadi, terima kasih, surat diterima dan kita akan bincang. Tetapi memang betul dalam RMK ke-13, satu fokus utama is we call it blue economy. And blue economy definitely includes shipbuilding and so on. There has been a lot of discussions about shipbuilding. All those requests is administrative yang perlu dibincangkan di peringkat kementerian masing-masing. Stamp duty exemption dekat MOF contohnya kan semua tu. So we go through that process, but as a matter of direction, blue economy is one of the focus areas and key themes di dalam RMK 13, you know, because it doesn't make sense for a maritime country like us, we don't capitalize on it. We have a lot of potential on sea-related economic activities, which we call blue economy, which we haven't really even tapped into it. Kementerian Ekonomi is planning to finalize our blue economy blueprint by 2026, I think. Sebab matilah kita tahun ni lah juga nak buat RMK, tahun ni lah juga. So for RMK, for Blue Economy 2026, the blueprint will come out. Tadi on this one, terima kasih. I will go through in detail. Sama juga dengan bahagian industri perkhidmatan dekat Kementerian Ekonomi. We are looking specifically about boosting investments into tourism sector. Jadi the details about bureaucracy, peraturan semua itu will go in details. But a lot of this will also be brought as proceedings dekat pemudah nanti. Because we've gone through that process dengan industri to list all the red tapes ataupun perkara yang kita perlu ubah. Problemnya, I didn't want to do it piecemeal. Because bila you buat piecemeal, dia tak menjadi. I needed to have an act terlebih dahulu to put the priority and the whip, so to speak, to do this. And that's why when we commit to 25% red tape reduction within, say, 3 years, we will go through this process because we will list down what are those 20% red tape that we can cut that will impact 80% of efficiency. And obviously we will go through sector by sector. So thank you very much to those working on it. At least you dah buat homework awal. It's a good, it will jumpstart our process lebih cepat once the act comes to force. Next question is on social enterprise. Social enterprise dalam RNK 13, satu fokusnya ialah untuk mewujudkan sektor ketiga, the third sector. Walaupun ada certification sekarang dekat peringkat KUSKOR, tapi sebenarnya dari segi founding a corporation dalam Malaysia ni tak ada for social enterprise. You are either registered with Registrar of Society (ROS) ataupun dengan SSM or Register of Business. So there's a clear separation and very strict law. Kalau you are under ROS, which is NGO, some NGO choose to do social enterprise as NGO. Some social enterprise choose to become social enterprise as a company under SSM, kan? So kalau you are under ROS, banyak benda you tak libat. You tak boleh generate income, you tak boleh charge fee, service semua. Akhirnya yang NGO ni dia akan menjadi peminta sedekah untuk grant. The other side pula, kalau you are social enterprise di bawah SSM atau Registrar of Business, whatever you do, satu ialah you have to pay tax, and people who contribute they will not get tax break because tax break only for certain type of non-profit. This is not sustainable in the future, especially dalam keadaan yang as our population is aging, healthcare needs more people and community involvement, and then it's impossible for government to continuously add civil service in order to look to meet for this demand. That's where the third sector comes in, which is the social enterprise, which is a hybrid between the two, but the regulation must allow for it. Sebab kalau tidak, we also need to protect society daripada scammers. The problem kenapa sekarang ni tak ada third sector ni, social enterprise, because there's a big, it's unregulated. Bila it's unregulated, memang banyak scammers sebenarnya yang kata, okey, mendermalah kepada kami menolong orang gini, tapi dia tak beritahu. Bila dia dapat duit, dia buat crowdfund ke apa, yang kat bawah tu sebenarnya semua sekilik balik kat dia. Yang sampai kepada penerima tu sebenarnya maybe 10% saja daripada yang rates, kan. Whereas in countries with very specific regulation on social enterprise, actually you regulate berapa banyak sebenarnya boleh pergi kepada administrative, what's the tax break like and so on. So RNK 13 will focus on that. Then once I think we go through that process, it makes it a lot easier for government to work with social enterprise to push for sustainable community driven social care and social well-being. Sekarang ni payah. And then tadi puan tadi pasal apa nama ni tourism, umrah semua. I think soal umrah scam semua ni, I think sekarang sedang diambil tindakan pun. My view is that when it comes to RMK 13, it is actually not policy in nature. This is actually the day-to-day operational kementerian yang terbabit termasuklah JAKIM semua. I know they are in the process to see how to regulate dan sebagainya. But what we look at in RMK 13 is basically the big policy shift, terutamanya untuk membantu tourism industry kan. I mean umrah dan juga menjadikan Malaysia sebagai hub umrah serantau is already a government policy and government focus. There are a series of negotiations happening. The ideal situation ialah hubnya di sini supaya orang basically you do the visa clearance semua dekat sini terus fly ke sana lah kan. So I think all these are happening. Cuma the nitty gritty, contohnya regulation, macam mana kita nak avoid semua tu, I think is already dalam tindakan and will be managed bila dibawa ke kabinet dan sebagainya lah. In terms of digitization dan sebagainya kan, okay, you may not like what I say lah. I actually don't believe government terlalu buat platform digital sebab selalunya dia tak menjadi. Because platform digital selalunya depends 100% on adoption. Lagi ramai orang pakai, dia tak kisah sebenarnya cantik ke buruk ke apa. Dia asalkan ada 5 juta orang pakai, then dia jadi. Kan? So for that to happen, selalunya it has to be private sector driven. Kalau saya, if I think that dia ada market adoption and potential yang besar, I'm hoping ada startup yang cerdik-cerdik ni start doing it lah. But that's where the difficulty. Kalau kita bagi grant atau subsidi dan sebagainya, also selalunya tak menjadi. They have to work out the right revenue model to make sure that this digital platform yang benefit umrah dan sebagainya or tourism, Muslim based tourism, give the right value kepada pengguna. And I'm sure sebenarnya if done well, you will have financial backers to do it. Jadi as a matter of principle, selalunya saya sangat apprehensif untuk menggunakan duit kerajaan untuk bagi subsidi untuk orang buat app. Some people don't like it lah. Tapi I not so much because saya discriminate ke apa. Basically by track record, kalau buat begitu, app tu mati. It has to be driven by the private sector who knows better what is needed and fund it privately, because only when it's funded privately, dia ada the right revenue model, and only with the right revenue model, you can sustain the app. Kalau dia one off bagi, dia buat untuk sekali tu je skin, lepas tu bug dia tak ganti, lepas 2-3 bulan dia tak update semua. Orang kita ni kalau digital ni, dia pakai sekali je, kalau dia tak suka dia tak pakai lah. And therefore you will never reach the adoption lah. Tadi saya tak ingat nama apa, Azrul pasal PhD dan sebagainya. Saya banyak ditanya lah apa program dan langkah kerajaan untuk memastikan orang ni dapat kerja, orang tu dapat kerja and so on. Again, what I say ialah mungkin tidak popular lah. I don't think government can effectively intervene in the job market untuk kita memastikan semua orang yang ada PhD tu dapat kerja yang dia nak. Oh, semua yang ada master tu dapat kerja yang dia nak. It's very much basically the job market. Apa yang kerajaan boleh buat? Sekarang ni memang betul ada masalah kalau orang nak buat master, bergantung kepada jenis master. Contohnya, kalau master itu dia tak ada banyak kerja dalam pasaran, memang gajinya tak banyak beza di antara yang master dengan degree. Tapi there is a new trend in the last 3-4 years. Banyak yang ambil master ni, contohnya master in data science. The first university yang offer master in data science tanpa perlu ada background yang sama was I think started it in 2018-19. Maksudnya semua yang degree tak kisahlah apa latar belakang degree, you take 2 years buat master in data science. These people tak cukup orang. It is highly in demand. And sebab itu saya notice mula ada universiti lain yang mula offer the same thing, master in data science kan. So it depends very much sebenarnya master dan PhD kita itu adalah dalam bidang apa. And this is my caution kepada semua orang as we plan sama ada kita sendiri atau anak kita. We have to make sure that whatever we choose to memang ada correlation dengan job demand dekat luar. To go back and say just because I have PhD and therefore I must earn this much and must be given this job because I have PhD, that's going to be quite difficult kan. So tugas kerajaan pula what we need to do is to restructure and push for the higher complexity of economy supaya we can we have companies yang do more research, yang do more high level, the type of work yang only master and PhD boleh buat. Part of the problem sekarang kenapa kita ada isu ini yang PhD, yang master ni payah nak dapat tempat, satunya mismatch dengan apa yang diperlukan. But number two is because we don't have enough companies that actually require PhD and master, because yang dia buat itu dia tak sampai ke level itu. So therefore I think what we focus dalam RMK 13 is very much about restructuring the economy so that we can have more of these companies, and when that happens I think then automatically the so-called the job and higher education market will realign dengan what is needed out there. And once that happens, I think your firms like you, which provide services to the postgraduate community, will thrive. And rather than, contohnya, I give and intervene dengan firm by firm, bagi insentif firm by firm and so on. We prefer, I'm very certain that the role of government is to fix the macro, because then the market knows better how to respond to it. Soalan yang kedua terakhir ialah yang bersabit dengan SPNB. SPNB di bawah MOF dan juga di bawah KPKT. I think yalah, the governance and the direction to be set oleh MOF dan KPKT will go through the process. Is it bawah DE lah? SPNB punya bawah DE. Yang itu bawah DE. Okay, yang itu is still funded by DE lah. Jadi akhirnya apa pun dia akan kembali kepada kita melalui proses bajet yang sama. Jadi the next process budget is around March or April. But you know, I cannot jump the gun. Ini adalah agensi yang di bawah kementerian lain, governance yang lain dan sebagainya. Kementerian Ekonomi set the policy begitu ini. You have to go through that process. Kalau contohnya dekat peringkat MOF dan KPKT memberi arahan bahawa sila mohon bajet lebih dengan Kementerian Ekonomi untuk DE, you will come and will go through the normal process lah. And last question on data sharing. Sebenarnya dasar kerajaan memang kita menggalakkan data sharing. Kalau tengok dekat DOSM, Open DOSM tu memang banyak data yang industri spesifik data pun telah dikongsi. Cuma kita memang memang dikekang kalau nak berkongsi data peribadi memang tak boleh. Kemudian data-data yang granular, akta masing-masing memang tak boleh. Itu balancing between data protection dan juga open government concept lah. Dalam agensi kerajaan pun sebelum ini sebenarnya kita tak boleh berkongsi data. I never know until I come into government. Dan sebab itu untuk kita buat padu, bila kita combine semua data kerajaan semua supaya semua tak, we know sesuatu keluarga itu berdasarkan semua data yang dia dah kongsi. Kami kena sign perjanjian dengan setiap agensi ni lah. Kalau tidak, dia tak boleh kongsi. So itu dengan kerajaan, sama kerajaan, bayangkan dengan rakyat di luar kan. So I think, but I do agree tadi dengan last suggestion, and saya ingat Kementerian Digital is constantly working on this. We do need, as we go along, we need to progressively build up our data regulation, data sharing regulation and so on, because kita nak strike a balance ni between data protection dan juga availability of data lah. But so far, as a general rule of thumb, personal data memang kita tak boleh kongsi, granular data kita tak boleh kongsi. Tapi kalau aggregated data sebenarnya telah dikongsi di Open Dossier. You can see dekat Open Dossier by sectoral ada banyak. So it depends sebenarnya kepada kegunaan yang diperlukan oleh industri masing-masing lah. The general view is this. Industrial access to data usually revolve around aggregated data, sectoral data. It's not on granular and individual data, because you look at things about macro juga kan, and I think that will continue to be developed, and we are pushing for better data integration dengan ASEAN pun, and as we do this process, definitely we need to have a better clarity about our own data regulation going forward lah. Sekarang ini ada, memang ada dasar dan sebagainya, PDPA ada, kemudian baru ni akta perkongsian data pun telah dibentangkan. But I think kita memang ada gap, and this will continue to be plugged in as we go along. Baik, 5:30 dia sudah jam di bawah. Saya nak datang sini pun, nak masuk sini saja 15 minit. So good luck to you lah, siapa yang drive kat bawah ni. Jadi last kali, terima kasih banyak-banyak. I hope you continuously